Good evening, Ossining residents. It's Mayor Victoria Gearity here, coming to you live for the second day. A little later today, probably later than I usually will. My family and I went out and enjoyed an absolutely gorgeous day on a nice long trail hike along part of the Appalachian Trail. It was a really beautiful day. I hope you had a chance to get out yourselves today and connect with Mother Nature and hopefully not too many other people. Fortunately for us, much of our hike was pretty desolate. We saw very few people. Near the end, it started getting we'd see people more often, but everybody was very respectful of physical distancing. And I'll say that term again, physical distancing, because I've been hearing that term more and more, and it seems like a much more accurate term than social distancing, because actually, I think we're all working really hard to have social connections, things like this, where we're connecting online and virtually with folks, and how incredibly important that is for all of us of every age. Although I did see some fun pictures of people visiting elderly relatives and sitting outside and talking through the screen door, and I was thinking I should probably plan a trip down to Sleepy Hollow to see my parents. I'll maybe sit out on their terrace and they can sit in the kitchen and we'll chat with each other that way. Good to see a couple of you have joined me already. Hello, John Codman. Always a pleasure. It's been a long time. I'll give you an update on some things here, and I also want to respond to some of the questions that I've received since yesterday's Facebook Live. We have, as of today, the number of positive cases in the village of Ossining has reached 300 on the nose. So that's where we are today. Yesterday we were at 283. Today we are at 300. According to what we're hearing from the governor, it's possible that we might be plateauing a little bit. Of course, we're all figuring this out one day at a time, and so we'll see what that means. Looking forward to, getting past the apex or the peak plateau, whatever we're going to call it ultimately. And I also wanted to, while we're talking about statistics related to the virus, I had someone ask me about how many people from the village of Ossining have passed away from the coronavirus. And that's a little harder to give it's a lot harder to give a precise number on. So what we do have is, we have the number for the county, which is 233 as of last night. Was 233 deaths that have been attributed to the coronavirus, and that's why it's a little bit tricky. We have a small number of death certificates that have been processed by the town clerk that acknowledge cause of death as corona. Then there are also a few other death certificates that have been issued that the cause of death is attributed to another health concern that they had, but we in some cases know that that individual had been exposed to somebody else who had tested positive. And if you've been reading any newspaper articles about this, then you may be aware that they're looking at New York City morbidity rates that seem to be skyrocketing and are not being attributed to coronavirus. That's just an area where there's so much data for them to be looking at. And also that the uptick in heart attacks, that the cause of death is being listed as a heart attack, but as we learn more and more about how this virus attacks people's bodies, yes, it's a respiratory virus, but it is also attacking people's hearts in ways that we hadn't fully realized before. So the reality is it will probably be months and maybe years before we have a full picture of what has been the impact, the number of positive people who have actually contracted the virus, whether they've had noticeable symptoms or not, and the number of people who had actually been killed as a result, died as a result of the virus. So I don't have a firm number of coronavirus-related deaths from the village of Ossining. The number that I'm able to provide to you on any given day is provided to us by Westchester County. Oh, and the other thing that complicates the cause of death count is the clerk was able to provide me with her insights on what she's seeing in her office here in Ossining. But if a patient was transferred to a hospital and if they pass away while they're in the hospital, then their death certificates are actually processed by the town clerk for where that hospital is located. So if it's Phelps, it would be the Mount Pleasant town clerk, I imagine, or perhaps the village. But I don't. Death certificates, I think, are a town function. more complex details about municipal governments than we need to go into. I also realized that I went through the whole Facebook Live yesterday without reminding folks to respond to the census. This is the first time that the census has had such a focus on online responses. 10 years ago, they didn't have nearly the capacity for people to be able to respond to the census online. So we have a lot more ongoing feedback about the response rates than we ever have before. And it also means we don't have a point of reference from 10 years ago. But what we do have a point of reference is how is the county doing versus the state versus the nation. And then after that, it breaks down to census tract. So the county is doing well, is comparable with the nation. The county has 44.7% as of the last email I got from the county, which was sometime in the last 12 or 24 hours. And the nation is at 45.1%. So we're on par with the national response rate right now. And we're ahead of the New York State response rate. The New York State response rate is not yet 40%. It's at 39.5%. That means that of the households and the people that we expect to that actually live here, and that was something that they did a lot of work in advance, reaching out to thank you, Terry Roman, for reminding everybody that responding to the census is very easy. It takes less than 10 minutes. I found the same thing doing it online. Thank you. Tell all of your friends, everybody, do it, and then tell a friend. The thing about, I'll just wrap up my thoughts on the census. It's not surprising that Census Day 2020 was April 1st. And so we did a lot of messaging about that, a lot of reminders to people about that. And we saw a nice increase in the response rate during that time. A few days later, we're seeing a slowdown in the response rate. The top two communities that have been able to keep their response rate going up are Bedford and Briarcliff. The community whose response rate to the census was the lowest in the last several days is Portchester. I don't know exactly where Ossining fits in there, but I will tell you as I look through the census tracts, and I posted on my Facebook page a couple of days ago, I think it was Sunday morning I might have posted it, a really fun tool that's on the census website where you can look at, you can tell it if you want to look at national numbers, state numbers, county numbers, or census tract numbers, where the response rates are higher and where they're lower. And so Ossining is actually made up of several different census tracts. It's not just the municipal borders. So, but if you look all across Westchester, where we have a sense of which are the wealthier communities and which are the less wealthy communities, the response rates are higher in the wealthier communities and lower in the communities where there's a lower area median income. And what do you think that means? That means the wealthier communities are going to be better represented in government, and they're going to be able to get their full amount of funding due. That's why it's so important that in Ossining, we get every response we possibly can. A complete count in Ossining. Ossining counts. That's the whole campaign. We count. We matter. We want our full funding for our school district. We want our full funding for all of our roads and for our grant access. And that's critical to our community being financially vibrant. So that's why you're going to hear us talking about this so much, even while we've got this incredible pandemic that we're living through. So final plea, if you have not yet responded to the census, please do, and then tell everybody you know how incredibly easy it is. Coming up this week, the census is going to be mailing out paper census forms for people who have not yet responded either online or by phone. And so we might see an uptick in some people who aren't as comfortable responding electronically. And I should just mention, as I should always mention, that online and by phone, there are people who can help you with the census that speak a variety of languages. So you don't have to be able to speak English to be able to be accurately counted. All right. Couple of other things that came up that I just wanted to, so actually tonight, Stacy is asking, not sure if you already talked about this, but what is doing, let me see, I can't see this whole message. School fields. Okay, I'll skip to enforcement because I did just have an exchange with Chief Sylvester to ask him because the governor had increased the fine for violations. So I asked him if they had written any violations, and his response was, that they have not, whenever they've approached people, people have not refused to break up whatever the group is or to go home. And the police will go onto the school fields and tell folks that if there's a group of people to break it up. The understanding from Ray Sanchez and the school district is that the fields themselves are not shut down. However, they are shut down for any group activities. So if one person wants to run around the track or kick a soccer ball, that's fine. The problem is if 6 people want to play soccer, that's not fine. And so the police have been erring on the side of, if there are 6 people, it doesn't matter if you all live in the same house, because I can't really, there's no way for us to be able to confirm that. So they just tell him to leave and they leave. And I did remind him or called his attention that a couple of folks had mentioned, particularly the AMD field. Sometimes maybe because it's less visible. I think the high school field has we've seen a significant drop in the amount of activity there. At least that's what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, although I don't pass by it as much as I used to, since I just don't get out as much as I used to. But the AMD field is one that we had been told that still does happen once in a while. But if you see 1 or 2 people on the field and they're spread out, or it's a father and a child or something, that's not actually against the rules for the schools. It is for the village and town parks. The village and town parks playgrounds are closed, fields and courts are completely shut down. Although we do really hope that people are able to get out, take a walk, take a hike, ride a bike, and wave at a distance to your friends and neighbors if you can. Let's see. I did want to mention grocery stores and the farmers market because I've seen a few threads on social media, and I've seen a variety of people's experiences and perspectives, and that's a tough one because we obviously all need to eat, and I think there's been a lot of support and outreach, at least emotionally, to the folks who are working, to our cashiers, to the folks who are working in the food industry and the people who are running the businesses, and working so hard to even in these stressful times. And they are on the front lines, and we need them. We all still need to eat. And the question of whether the farmers market should be open or not, it's also considered essential. It is a way to get food, and I've seen both sides of it, and I get it. And I think you should just go where you feel safest. I went to Acme yesterday at 7:45, and there were very few of us there. There's no one else in line, so that was a good time to go. Since my schedule is pretty fluid these days, I can shop at a less popular time. It used to be you never want to go to the grocery store at 5 p.m. I don't know if that's still the case. 7:45, Acme was totally empty on a Monday evening. And I haven't been to the farmers market in a couple of weeks, but when I was there a couple of weeks ago, they had done a pretty proactive job at creating the chalk lines to make sure people were keeping space between each other while they were waiting in line. You can no longer pick out your own vegetables and pick them up and enjoy them. The person who's working there, you just point and they gather it up for you to really minimize the chance of transmission of any virus. So a lot of people feel better about being outdoors and shopping at the farmers market. And if you're one of those people, then great. It's a really beautiful way to get out and be in downtown and do, and accomplish one of the things we have to do, which is to get food. And if it doesn't feel right for you, then I hope that you're able to find a grocery store that isn't too crowded or at a time that works for you. It's something that I feel like every day and every week our mindset is evolving on this. I know I'm feel differently going to the grocery store today than I did a week ago. I'm very conscious of not touching anything unless I know for sure that that's the actual avocado that I'm going to buy. And I think that I'm just reflecting back what I'm feeling from the rest of society right now. And tonight is the village board meeting, which is a very unusual night. We rarely have a Tuesday night meeting, and it is only because Wednesday night is the start of Passover. So we will be having our virtual meeting starting at 7:30 this evening. If you don't know how to get there, you just go to the village website and look look at the agenda, which is it's definitely on the Village of Ossining page for Facebook. And once I finish this up, maybe I'll repost it on my page. Or if you get my Monday email, it's linked there as well. So you look at the agenda and then you click on the Zoom link and you'll be able to watch the meeting as it's happening. If you don't want to spend your Tuesday evening starting at 7:30 watching the Zoom while it's happening, you can just watch it on YouTube. It'll be up sometime tomorrow. And this is a work session, so it's not an opportunity for public comment. Last week, we had our first legislative session via Zoom, and we were able to, when there were times that the public would normally comment, we had our first opportunity to have people raise their hand and so that they could speak. And there was not a long line of people that were watching. But if you want to tune in tonight, it is... I think we're going to end up having a pretty lengthy meeting. And for some reason, Zoom meetings feel longer than in-person meetings. And we've had a couple of pretty long ones, and we've had some executive session, which goes on to another. We turn off the public Zoom and we go on to a private Zoom and continue there to talk about some items that can't be discussed in public. There is a few things I wanted to call to your attention on this week's agenda. One of them is something that I actually don't know very much about, but other people really care about. I've recused myself, which is why I don't know very much about it, from discussion of a potential development at the DPW site. So we are having a presentation. Why can't I do this? We are having a presentation by the developer who has a proposal, a developer who has a proposal for that site. You may recall we put out an RFQ a year ago. We got a bunch of responses. Somewhere along the line, I started recusing myself. So I've never seen this proposal. So I'm going to see it at the same time everybody else is. And when we move on to that topic, which is right near the beginning of the meeting, my camera will go dark and I will watch it like everyone else. And we'll see what the proposal looks like. And I really don't know what the village board's plan is for to continuing that conversation, or if they're opening the conversation, because they've had some executive sessions related to it. And again, I don't know what's happened in that executive session. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what it is, and hope that others tune in to see what's going on. Then one of the other things that I'll just mention, again, we talked about yesterday about the village has decided, we passed a resolution last week, so that if you are not able to pay your water bill by the due date, that there will be no penalty until June 5th. So we extended the deadline until June 5th, essentially. Obviously, if you can pay your water bill, then please do. We certainly need revenue just like everyone else. And some people are not feeling the financial devastation that others are. Most people really do want to pay their bills, and they want to pay them on time. And if you're able to, then God bless you, please do. And if you're not able to, where we can, the village is doing everything that we can to alleviate that pressure. Tonight, we're going to be discussing changing the code so that we can. We've actually allowed people to make partial payments of their water bill in the past, and then we realized the code doesn't accommodate that, so we're adjusting the code. So that's another way that if your water bill is $300, but you have $100 now, then at least pay that off, and then that's some of that's paid off, and if you go past the due date, at least that portion of it won't be penalized. So I think those are the big things that people would be interested in the work session. I'm just going to open up the work session here while I'm talking to you, see if there's any other items that I really want to be sure to call to people's attention. We have one capital project that we're moving forward that is related to the water tanks. We're going to be also talking about our financial situation in general. It's not budget season yet for us. The village board, by the time we see the budget that's proposed to us by the manager, she will have spent all of September and October meeting with her department heads, and the chief presents his budget, and all the department heads actually present their budget to us, although the manager is actually the chief financial officer for the village. The board of trustees we have the power of the purse. We pass the budget. And right now we're at such an unusual moment that we want to take stock of where we are, where we see our finances, our financial situation, because we are still providing services. You probably had your trash picked up today or yesterday, it's really impressive, all of the departments that are continuing to work. Obviously, we're keenly aware of the healthcare providers in our community. They're doing so much work, and our police officers and all of our first responders. There's other frontline staff that in the village are just doing tremendous work in the sanitation department and the parks department and the water department. And those are essential services too, and we really need them. And we're very fortunate to have such dedicated workers that are keeping all of the village running in all of those departments. So they're still working. And they're also still getting paid, of course. And we're really fortunate that the village has been able to maintain services. However, and that is with taking as many precautions and measures as we can to protect them, particularly if people who can't avoid being in close proximity to each other. So we'll be talking about, there's a lot of capital projects that we thought would be moving forward, and now it's time for us to take stock and say what are really the most urgent, even if they can be deemed as essential projects now, or even if we had been planning on doing them later this year. We may want to hold off on some projects as we see exactly what the financial impact is going to be in the wake of this pandemic. So those are the big things that we'll be talking about. I think I covered most of them. The other proposed laws is kind of wonky. It has to do with something that we discussed at a previous work session, and as that comes up for a public hearing, I'll let you know more. So I'm not seeing a lot more questions. I think we addressed all the questions that I've gotten since yesterday, and I'll just do a final plea to remind folks, please respond to the census. Go online right now. If you're on Facebook, so you know how to get it, or you can scroll down my thread, my page, or you can go to the Village of Ossining page, and there's a gazillion links reminding you to respond to the census. If you want more information about the census, we've got a whole repository of information about the census online. And I will also remind folks to be signed up for our web blast. There's a ton of great links and information that come out on Thursday. Sign up for the Monday Mayor's Message, and there's also links that I provide there and let you know, just like what I did right now, some of the highlights of what we're going to be discussing this week, so that if there's something you really care about, that you know that it's coming up. And I also let you know what we did in the previous week, and there's always some links there that can make it more convenient for you to find all of that information. And on the Village website, right front and center, on the very top of the quick links is resources about COVID-19. And thanks to Jamie Hoffman in the Village Manager's office, she maintains that for us and has reorganized it recently, so that if you have any questions, you're looking for resources, go to that page, and you can probably find it there. She updates it pretty regularly. And with that, I will look forward to seeing folks tomorrow. I'll do these Facebook Lives. I'm planning to do it every day, maybe 7 days a week. We'll see. This is day 2, and it seems to be going pretty well. If you think of something after I sign off that you want me to address tomorrow and you want me to look into it, then please send me an email at Gearity@villageofossining.org. That's my last name, Gearity@villageofossining.org. And I will look into it and get back to you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Take care. Be well, everyone.